Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Resident Evil 4 Remake on PS5. Capcom has been on a remake tear the last several years, with the Resident Evil franchise arguably started with the 2002 remake of the original Resident Evil, but much more aggressively and much faster since the Resident Evil 2 remake, which debuted in 2019 and was received to near universal praise. This is also not to mention the success of the 7th and 8th iterations of the series, which to still get praise for games this deep into an almost 30-year franchise, you have to keep it fresh, or at least be doing something right, die-hard fans notwithstanding. But today's subject was initially received differently. Many fans and talking heads in the industry said it wasn't needed, wasn't wanted. What would happen is Capcom was to fulfill the project and go full steam ahead anyway. Let's get into that with 2023's Resident Evil 4 Remake. You see, dear listeners, when you've been playing games as a hobby as long as I have, it is hard to look at and review a remake title with fresh eyes. Usually because I've played the fucking original. I'm old. I already know how this shit goes down. And many remakes do try to hew as close to the originals as possible, unless you get the kind of remake that instead is a sequel to the original and kind of relies on players having known the original, like some companies I could mention have tried to do for the final iteration of their fantastically made sequence of products for about the 7th time over now. So I was in the former camp. Resident Evil 4 is still perfectly viable and great to play as in 2024 as it was when it was released in 2005 on the GameCube. I've bought that game multiple times just to have on various consoles as the generations aged out and I no longer had those consoles. Worked perfectly well. RE2, yeah, that game was definitely locked to its time on the PlayStation 1. Looked it, and could use a fresh coat of paint and some quality of life upgrades, especially since 20 years had passed since the original first release. But RE4? The game that spawned a damn near literal thousand over-the-shoulder third-person shooters? Eh, that was a different story. However, the heads at Capcom Japan felt it was time for the upgrade treatment, such as RE2 and RE3 had gotten, as well as the series' progenitor game. Development of this remake began in 2018 by a studio named M2 and was brought in-house in 2021, and the people who turned Resident Evil 2 Remake into such a smash hit with their talent came back to polish the ever-loving shit out of RE4 Remake. However, the team decided to make some changes that would not become seen until its reveal and debut before players. The first was something that had had its time in the sun, but was now a pariah of the gaming industry: QuickTime events. Those mini-game mechanics meant to keep the player awake and engaged with the game when cutscenes were playing, which, let's be honest, the average player goes off to get a snack during, and often comes back not caring or knowing what happens as long as their digital jump man goes shoot bang for points. Many people fall sharply into the Barabbas camp when it comes to QuickTime events, screaming "Crucify him!" at developers when they include them. I was never really bothered by their existence or inclusion in games for the time they were a thing. They didn't exist, then they existed, then they were a historic footnote. Kind of like the lifespan of a human being. You don't exist, you existed for a time, then you no longer do. It may be important to you that it all happened, but to the majority of us and the cold, uncaring universe, you are of very little significance. So were QTEs. But they really, unreasonably pissed people off. So Capcom got rid of them in RE4 Remake. Next, they had to update the characters, who were seen as somewhat annoying, weird, disjointed in their acting and presentation, or some other issue people had, to make them more human and better acted. The character of Ashley was humanized and made more believable. instead of being a shrill, screeching, girl power and my daddy's the president pastiche that did a foul disservice to both feminism and the office of the president. Several of the bosses, who were meme machines all their own, were rebalanced to have more connection to the plot, although it is debatable if this worked, rather than some monster of the week Dr. Evil understudy stuffed into an action horror game about bug monsters playing at an Invasion of the Body Snatchers rehashed plot. And lastly, against Capcom's normal business plan, they made the characters consistent, reusing but aging up the main character of Leon S. Kennedy to fit with his Resident Evil 2 remake look, along with his bizarre romantic foil, Ada Wong. But while Leon's voice actor was retained, Ada's was replaced. We'll get to that mini non-controversy as well, don't worry. God, it is fucking exhausting cataloging white male gamer rage. A job fit only for the bureaucrats of hell, but here we are. They also tried to dial up the spooky this time out, as it is kind of hard to make a scary game out of an arcade shooting gallery of grunts and mutants that drop health and ammo like candy. So, where are we at with this story? You are, once again, United States Special Envoy to the President, as the Japanese understand it, Leon S. Kennedy, one of the few survivors of the Raccoon City incident of a viral zombie outbreak that required the government to nuke its own soil to cleanse. And in the years since, you helped bring down the Umbrella Corporation and spend years training under some of the cruelest motherfuckers in the armed forces to be one of the absolute best, a one-man army. One of those aforementioned cruel motherfuckers will come back to haunt you in this game. Leon is then sent on a one-man army mission to rescue the president's daughter from terrorists after she was kidnapped while at college. One wonders what happened to her Secret Service detail she would have been required to have, and winds up in rural Spain, of all places, where a bizarre cult is trying to implant Ashley with a parasite that would turn her into a mind-controlled puppet and would go on to infect the president, and thereby give the cult world domination. Yes, it is a B-movie cheesy-ass plot, but again, sold amazingly well. People went in for it. Perfect video game fodder. After Leon's local cop escorts disappear into the woods of Spain, he wanders off after them, only to be attacked by locals under the control of the cult, who attack with every variety of B-horror movie farm item or industrial logging piece of equipment you could imagine. This escalates after he enters a local castle with Ashley, trying to escape the hordes of Deliverance Spaniards, and meets up with Ada after not seeing her for half a decade, and Louise Sarah, reworked as a mercenary scientist who helps excavate and then soups up the parasites at the center of this cult, and who is trying to make amends for his evil ways before he dies. This Luis is way better than the original, far less of an ethnic slur, and more of just a remorseful man trying to act the confident, swaggering goofball to cover his pain. Leon is infected with the Las Plagas parasite early on, and is racing against time for himself and Ashley to find a way to get rid of the damn things before they become more mindless body snatchers themselves. From the castle, they find themselves on an armored research island, complete with disused oil derrick, where all of the Las Plagas research and general world domination plot was started. Hell, at one point you find a throne and a temple to the bugs. So the head of the cult, the self-styled Lord Osmond Sadler, really has his Dr. Evil cosplay on. After a series of improbable battles and running gunfights and monster boss battles, Leon and Ashley are cured. Ada leaves on her own mission and in a post-game cutscene decides not to give the sample of Las Plagas she was supposed to capture to her taskmaster. Luis is dead, most everyone else is dead, and Leon and Ashley bond over shared trauma and growing self-confidence, rather than the game concluding on Ashley making a piss-poor pass on Leon for sexual favors while sitting astride a jet ski in the middle of the goddamn Atlantic Ocean. Oh yeah, and Albert Wesker is there too, hinting at an RE5 remake. Yay. Look, folks, I reviewed the original a while ago, and I didn't really want to rehash the plot points from that review. I don't really do game criticism here. although I suppose what the show is can roughly be classified as game criticism. So I'm not here to say what the game did right or wrong based on any sort of technical aspect or whatever the fuck it is the game critics get paid to do. I just offer my opinions based on my own perspective. So here are my opinions on the changes to the Resident Evil 4 remake. Firstly, I really have to commend Capcom and the actors for honestly making the main cast of characters, which consists roughly of Leon, Ashley, Ada, and Luis, actual people, rather than cartoon characters and bad takes on many of the characters Bruce Willis has played during his career. These are people who have arcs, even shallow ones, but they are there. People who feel pain, have pathos, and panic in the situation that for them is utterly terrifying, even if the person behind the controls is guzzling caffeinated beverages and is hip deep in empty pizza boxes. As much as I love the original, every one of those characters would have made even famed schlock director Roger Corman think twice before casting them. Next, Capcom did do much, much better with the atmosphere in RE4 Remake. The village, the castle, even the island are genuinely oppressive, dripping with atmosphere and dark corners where anything potentially could jump out from, even if it doesn't. The Las Plagas plague seems more insidious, more deeply rooted in the culture of this section of Spain, a terrible thing in old legends. The sleeping dragon on the hillside, the locals put down long ago, but outsiders awaken to awful ends and outcomes. I, like the rest of the waking world, love the new use of the knife Leon has, a much more useful tool than in the original. There's nothing like using it to parry incoming flaming arrow shots like a badass movie hero, or improbably stopping a spinning blade of a rusted chainsaw seconds before it tears into Leon's neck, to give the player a sense of unreal power, like a comic book superhero, even if the blade breaks and needs repair. And the shopkeeper you meet again and again throughout the game, well, chef's kiss. This old black market pirate is still guffawing and giggling nearly 20 years on, taking local coin for dealing out various flavors of death. And now, he has side quests for extra rewards. Why fucking not, says I. Everyone has side quests in games these days. Why not horror side quests? Now for the other side of the coin. The bosses, or at least the ham-acted ones, not the oversized slimy hellbeasts, are largely there, kind of like they were in the original. And that is my biggest criticism of RE4 Remake. For some Christ-awful reason I never understood, people love Ramon Salazar. The master of the castle, Leon and Ashley and Luis and Ada all find themselves in at various points. In the original, Lil Hitler here was about as scene-chewing as possible. Kudos to the original voice actor for hewing through this dialogue with a machete. But at the end of it, I was too bored by this tiny tyrant bullshit to care, other than when he melted into his pet monsters and turned into another trademark Resident Evil monster to slay with a rocket launcher. If anything, he is far toned down here, just another lieutenant of the cult who just so happens to own a castle, the perfect hideout for cult activities. In the end, he turns into some sort of space squid that Leon has to kill in far more interactive battle than the original, which was just a stand-up gunfight. Whereas now you have to duck and dodge, bob and weave, and use the environment to your advantage. Great boss fight, bland character. Many players bemoaned the change of Salazar to make him better fit the story, missing his open mic night comedy warm-up routine and clips with Leon. The only thing I can say is this. Motherfuckers, can you not read a room or get a plot? For decades now, y'all have been demanding for games to be seen as a viable form of art. Shakespeare, Cecil B. DeMille, and Neil Druckmann as some sort of bastardized Frankenstein together holy trinity of entertainment. But when Capcom decides to swap out one of Claudio Fragaso's deep-cut subplot characters for something in the direction of DeMille, y'all piss yourselves in fury. Make up your minds. Schlock or serious, you cannot have both. The next is the oddball of the game, the villainous military murderer Krauser. who trained Leon way back when, but was betrayed by the US government when he was on a mercenary mission in South America and had to kill his squad and escape the jungle alive after some vague Umbrella Corp related bullshit. So, to get back at Uncle Sam for this slight, he accepts Las Plagas into his heart, literally, and becomes just another face on Leon's dartboard. He was a filler boss in the original, utterly forgettable, and fit about as well into that story as a whole kindergarten class fits into a wood chipper. And he exists in the same role here. Filler boss with a bit more added on to make him tug at the heartstrings for killing Luis. Why he wasn't left on the cutting room floor, I'll never know. And if he was your favorite boss and his unending knife fights were your favorite part of the game, well, I must thank you for taking on the day job of being a notary public. I'm sure it is a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. If bureaucracy had a basic bitch mode, that would certainly be it. And lastly, Lord Sadler himself. What a waste of potential. In the original, he was like David Koresh playing Santa Claus, all chuckles and playful finger wagging at Leon as the player cut down his cultist army until he finally freaked out and mutated into a humongous armored spider atop the disused oil rig at his base that Leon had to give the tyrant treatment to. In the remake, he is a lot more like Logan Roy playing David Koresh at the company Halloween party, all snarls and aggressive cajoling and doubling down on the serial abuser aspect of his personality, and better utilizing his psychic powers connection he has with anyone infected with Las Plagas, including Leon and Ashley. At first he first appears to Leon in the remake as a mental sending, a psychic vision, and to be honest, I was rooting for this to be the case, meaning Leon made him up. Sadler would have been nothing more than a delusion as Leon was going through the advanced stages of infection as the parasite wormed its way into his brain. I think this would have made the cult so much more creepy and noteworthy if it was a collective hallucination brought on by brain worms that turned regular people into demented killers, rather than some sort of ritual world domination terrorist plot brought on by a particularly gross James Bond villain, a Blofeld in robes. But sadly, no. Sadler is real, and is exactly a Blofeld in robes and tentacles. And he ends up the game the same multi-eyed armored spider he did in the first game, which Leon must blow apart with a rocket launcher. And as an aside, Jesus hot fucking Christ, that last act, the Evil Island stage, was the worst part of the original. I was so hoping Capcom would find a way to delete that weird appendix of Shinji Mikami's frazzled, chopped up and sewn together to hit deadline plot of the original and just end things at the castle. But no, they fucking doubled down on this last act Evil Island off the coast bullshit, and its weirdly armored squads of possessed militants and rubbery-toothed monsters, while we wrap this shit show up after such promise. If this section was your favorite part of the game, then you may be the only person I've ever met who actually likes their job at the DMV, because playing it was like being stuck in driver's license renewal hell. I did not play the Separate Ways DLC for the game, where Ada gets her own side story and where a lot of the main cut content ended up. I might one day, but I did not for this review, and fuck if I care. So that's that. So how did the critics see this game? Did we share the same thoughts? Not likely, but here's what they thought anyway. It received overwhelming critical praise, sitting at 98% on OpenCritic, whatever the fuck that is, and in the low 90s on Metacritic. And most review outlets gave it glowing 9s and 10s out of 10s. I would like to point out Destructoid's Zoe Handley, who gave Resident Evil 4 Remake a 7.5 out of 10 for being, quote, just as atonal as it was originally. The best section of the game is where you first enter the village, and it never reaches that height again, end quote. You know what? Good on you, Zoe, for sticking it to the man and bucking trend on this one. Good on you for speaking your mind and your piece. Won't do a fat fucking load of good here versus the industry machine, but I respect you for your views. The game sold 3 million units in its first 2 days of release, and by March 2024 has sold over 7 million units. So it is a certified hit, just not with Zoe over there. It was nominated for a bunch of awards, and even won a few. And admittedly, this was my own personal game of 2023. Narrowly, and I mean narrowly, beating out the Dead Space remake, only because they did some new hotness the other game did not quite manage, and because it will actually get a sequel, even if it is for the atrocious Resident Evil 5, and don't worry, I'll get to that someday, instead of another EA blueballing. Also, Shinji Mikami himself said he enjoyed the game, so I guess there's its blessing that Capcom did good by us all. Despite all the praise, for some fuck reason, as I said earlier, there was some non-controversy attached to this title over the change in voice actresses for Ada Wong, a character I'd never liked to begin with. Considering how many voice actresses this character has had since the PS1 days, as Capcom likes to recast their characters with every single fuck iteration of this series, I assume to keep prices down or due to some kind of acting law in Japan or because their board of directors is as much a bag of slimy fuckwits as their American counterparts, I didn't see the problem with casting Lily Gao's performance. Ironic, then, that the first Asian woman to portray an Asian character, normally voiced by white chicks in a Resident Evil game, is the one person people got mad at. Mostly the idea I got was people feeling she had a flat affect or something. Or maybe racism, likely gamer racism. I don't know. But like any game that gets popular quick or is popular sequel to a popular title, some claptrap shitmouth pricks gotta come out of the woodwork and focus their demented incel anger at an actress getting paid, probably well below rate, to play a role rather than just about anyone else in the chain or of game creation. Or perhaps where these people should correctly focus their anger, meaning at themselves, and get their shit together and sort themselves out. I know that is unlikely to happen in our polarized current atmosphere, and plenty of grifters like to capitalize on this nameless, ambient, formless, and indignant rage, but here we are nonetheless. But for all the shit I just gave it, I really did enjoy Resident Evil 4 Remake just as much, if not more, than the original. Again, does its existence invalidate the original? No, of course not, especially since a bunch of major changes were made. Was it necessary to remake? Well, at the end of the day, I am still not sure if I can answer that question for you. In my heart of hearts, no. It truly did not need a remake. The remake was welcome and consistent with Capcom's current line and line of thought, and I bought it. But no, at this point, despite the time since the original, it wasn't necessary. Yes, I know a lot of players now were kids or maybe not even born when the original came out. Like I said, being a gamer this long has been affording me a breadth of experience, knowledge, and perspective that many younger players of the game just simply lack due to the passage of time, and could have used or needed a remake to understand this game as a cultural phenomenon and why so many games look at it, and that's as may be. And of course, was it scary? That is something you have to answer for yourself. We all experience horror subjectively, and the things that scare us vary wildly, whether due to personal trauma, phobias, or the different things that stab cold fear into our monkey hindbrains. There are people who are scared shitless of The Shining, but see something like Terrifier as absolute trash. The Shining bored me to tears personally, and yet John Carpenter's The Thing still gets me every time. Was I scared by RE4 Remake? Nope. But goddamn, it was fun as hell as a shooter. Great physics, great atmosphere. Nighttime in the game is oppressive, but not scary. At least not in the way that would leave me wary of dark corners or interacting with other human beings. But was it Capcom scary? Absolutely. Peak of their game, really. Well, maybe not Resident Evil 7 peak scary, but they did have to tone it down after that game for how it badly scared the home market of Japan, which is their primary concern. Remember, we're just a market afterthought. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 Remake. Good stuff, definitely worth all the praise it got. Capcom did a great job as usual, but it still needed more fixes, and stuck too close to the original in bad ways. I still absolutely recommend it over many, many other titles out there, and it again proves its worth in the survival horror, action horror, whatever the fuck you jackasses want to call it now horror, with your incessant need to classify things like bugs in jars, lest your lives be unfulfilled and easily digestible, which is not the point of life to be easy or easy to digest. You're supposed to have to chew on things, have hardships, and be confronted with different ideas or philosophies, and have to reconcile with that. Horror is like that too, just the visceral, nasty kind, where you're unlikely to survive to learn a lesson afterward. And since it is unlikely that the remakes of not only this series, but many other storied franchises are unlikely to end anytime soon, as I can see my own gaming shelf filling up with remakes and reimaginings of classic titles I had years before, we might as well get comfortable, settle down, and enjoy the middle-aged gaming ride for as long as we have to. Indie titles won't save us from this, and new IPs will eventually end up on the remake grist pile. Hell, even another great game market crash couldn't teach anyone anything. But at least, maybe the remakes will never be newer and shinier, and fix all the bugs and janky charm of the original titles, and be something to look forward to in our retirement home days? Maybe? Yeah, I won't hold my breath either. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, Orden Wells, and Masked Llama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out the Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.